Hey everybody! In my last video I reviewed Phanteks P360A, an affordable mid-tower PC case that comes with two ARGB fans, an ARGB accent strip, and some great quality of life features for the budget-minded PC builder. The P360A is the bigger brother to the P300A, which I also did a video on. If you haven't had time to watch them yet, go ahead and pause this video and give them a look. Go on, I won't mind, I'll wait. Sweet, you're back. Thanks for giving those videos a watch. Let's continue, shall we? In this video, I'll be covering the Phanteks Eclipse P400A, going over its features and comparing it to the P300A and P360A. After all that, I'll give you my recommendation on which of these three cases I think is most deserving of your hard-earned money. Welcome to the middle of nowhere. The P400A's box uses the same plain brown design as the other two cases, and the styrofoam is the same hard, crumbly stuff that should provide a modicum of protection during shipping. I would like to see better padding used, maybe something that is also more recyclable. The P400A has two versions available, a standard non-RGB version, which I have here, and a digital version. The latter is similar to the P360A in that it comes with ARGB fans, 3 in all. Unlike the P360A, the P400A digital has no ARGB accent strip. The digital version also will set you back an additional 30 to 40 bucks on average from what I could find when looking at online shops. Ironically, this is about the same cost as a 3-pack of the Phanteks fans used in the digital version, so right off the bat, my suggestion is to go with the non-digital version, pick up a 3-pack of ARGB fans, and then you'll have 5 total fans to cool your PC, for roughly the same cost as the P400A digital. The only thing you'll be lacking is the built-in RGB control buttons the digital version has. Speaking of price, I was able to purchase my P400A for $69.99, which is a heck of a deal and the same price I paid for the P360A. As of this video, however, the P400A seems to be out of stock or way overpriced. Its original MSRP is $90, which to me is 10 bucks too much considering how similar to the P360A it is. If you do want the digital version, you might be able to find it for around $100 to $110. The P400A is available in black, while the digital version is available in black or white. As with the other A versions of the Eclipse case, the A is for airflow and the P400A's mesh front panel allows your front fans to have access to all the air they'll need. Have the older version of the P400 with the solid front panel? Not a problem. Phanteks sells a mesh version and I'll put a link in the description below. Do be aware though, it is rather pricey on Amazon and unfortunately the panel is out of stock on Phanteks' website. Alright, let's see what accessories you get and what features this case provides. Upon opening the box, let's see what we get. All right, we have a baggie full of various screws and some plastic zip ties. The screws will be for your fans, the motherboard. It looks like you also get an extra thumb screw, so that's cool. And I see an extra standoff as well for a motherboard. So either if you lose one or if you need an extra one for EATX. All right, so that's it for that. Before getting to the manual, you also have a warranty information card. And then finally, we have our manual, which is nothing but some folded paper and is very similar to the other two cases. It'll be both in color and black and white. It looks like we have some building instructions, or at least panel removal instructions, some features that I'm going to cover here shortly. As well as what each of the cables are, what accessories you get, some of the things that you can buy separately. Let's see here, what else? That's really it. So yeah, so your basic manual, it's actually pretty nice. Moving on to the case itself, the P400A is made of steel and glass with some plastic bits here and there. The paint is a powder coating and it doesn't seem to be too much of a fingerprint magnet as the P300A is. I can only assume the white version will be glossy as it is with the P360A. Since you won't really be touching the case all that much once it's in place, I wouldn't be too worried about any fingerprints you do get on the case. You can always wipe off any prints or wear some gloves when handling the case for cleaning and PC assembly. Also, be aware the white digital version of the P400A has a black interior, just like the white P360A. So if you're looking for an all-white case, you'll want to look elsewhere. When it comes to size, the P400A measures 470mm deep, 210mm wide, and 465mm high. Comparing it to the other two cases, the P400A is wider and deeper than both. It's also taller than the P300A, but the same height as the P360A. Unfortunately, the P400A uses the antiquated 4-screw method of securing the glass panel to the case instead of the more elegant hinge mechanism found on some Phanteks cases, or the 2 thumb screws method the P300A and P360A use. Fortunately, the back panel is at least held by 2 captive thumb screws. The glass panel runs the height of the case, which is in contrast to the P300A and P360A, which stops at the PSU shroud area. The glass panel has a black border around it and is slightly tinted. Mounting the glass panel back onto the case while upright is quite easy, as there are 4 nubs that help hold the panel in place while you screw it down. There are also 2 strips of padding at the top and bottom at the back of the glass to help keep it from rattling. As with the other 2 Eclipse cases, there is no front dust filter. The expectation is the front panel's small perforations will act as a filter while not restricting airflow. The front panel is easy to remove and the front I/O is not attached to it. At the back of the case there are 7 PCI slots. The covers are reusable and held on by thumb screws. Should you want to mount your GPU vertically, you can purchase a vertical GPU bracket separately, another feature shared with the other 2 cases. Like the other 2 cases, the P400A is quite sturdy, and even more so with the 2 side panels on. The back panel has some flex to it, but nothing to be concerned about. If you're interested in modding the P400A, know the case is held together using a combination of rivets and screws. Right, for the most part, the P400A's I/O is going to be the same regardless of which version you have. The only differences are going to come between the digital and non-digital version are for the fan control button on the non-digital version, which is right here and it's actually underneath. And then on the digital version, the reset button is moved to here, and these 2 buttons become one for RGB colors and one for RGB mode. Both cases will have an illuminated power button. Both cases have 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, and both cases have a separate mic and headphones jacks as well, 3.5 millimeters. You'll see some little icons denoting which button does what. However, for the black version, it's a dark gray and I can barely see it now, so don't expect to be able to see it in a dark room, unfortunately. Again, as I said, the buttons are underneath for the reset and fan control, and they're quite clicky. The power button has a little texture, and then you can see the ring light here. And then here it looks like you have a hard drive activity light as well. As with the P300A and P360A, the P400A comes with 2 dust filters. There you won't find a front dust filter, just like with the other 2 cases, because the front mesh is so fine that will be acting as your dust filter. The other 2 filters are on the top and bottom, and as with the other 2 cases, you have the same kind of round hole top filter held on into place by thin magnetic strips. The bottom filter, just like with the other 2, is accessed from the rear, is a more fine mesh, and this will help to keep dust out of your power supply, and it is framed by this nice plastic frame. This is a lot better mechanism than some of the budget cases I've seen where it's just the filter with some tabs and it's a pain in the butt to get access to. With this, at least you can just slide it right back in. The case feet for the P400A are plastic and lift the case up roughly around 19 millimeters off the ground. There should be enough room for your PSU to breathe in fresh air. They're lined with the soft foam padding as with the P300A and P360A. They're also held to the case with a mixture of screws and some kind of plastic nub. And I've already tried, but they're not very easy to remove at all. If you want to mod the case and add different feet, just know that the feet are held on by a mixture of screw and something else. The P400A supports ATX, MATX, ITX, and even eATX motherboards. If you do want to go big and use an eATX motherboard and the optional hard drive trays at the front, your motherboard cannot be wider than 272 millimeters. Standoffs are pre-installed for an ATX motherboard, and the case comes with an extra should you need it. The middle standoff has a nub which will help center the motherboard and also support it should you install it while your case is upright. There's also a generous cutout on the motherboard tray, so you'll have access to the CPU bracket when the motherboard is mounted to the case. Out of the box, storage on the P400A is pretty ample. You can install up to 4 2.5-inch hard drives or 2 2.5-inch hard drives and 2 3.5-inch hard drives. You'll be able to mount them on the 2 caddies for the 2.5-inch drives, or on the provided sleds here. You can also mount the 2.5-inch drives or the 3.5-inch drives. Mounting the 3.5-inch drives is toolless, and all you gotta do is flip out these little tabs here, slide in the hard drive, there's these little plastic nubs here and whatnot, and then you just shut it, and there you go. For 2.5-inch drives, you have 4 screw mounting points right there. For the side bits here, all you gotta do is push up, bring this out, and then you'll screw in the hard drives from the side. Once you're done, you just slip it right back in. Should the included 2.5-inch drive caddies and the sleds not be enough storage for you, you can also add 4 more hard drive brackets, storage brackets here that accept 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drives. They are around $10 a piece, so getting 4 of them will dramatically increase the price of this case. I believe you just kind of unscrew these little brackets here, which I'll do one, and that allows you to pass through the cables, and then you just mount the cage itself. That might be toolless, I'm not 100% sure, but you definitely want to remove that so that you can pass through the cables. Be aware too, if you end up using the drive cages in the front, this will restrict the width of the motherboard that you can use. So if you're going eATX, again, as I've already stated, you'll be restricted to 272 millimeters, and it will also restrict the length of GPU you can use. So again, you'll be cut off right around here. Also, as with the other 2 cases, if you don't need the hard drive cage at the bottom, you can totally remove it. It is simply held on by 4 screws. Doing so will allow you to also better store your PSU cables. Now let's get to the GPU, CPU, and PSU compatibility. You can install GPUs up to 420 millimeters in length or 280 millimeters if you are using the additional storage trays. To put it in perspective, an NVIDIA RTX 3070 Founders Edition is 242 millimeters, while an MSI Gaming X Trio 3070 is 323 millimeters. The MSI GTX 1650 I've installed here is 245 millimeters in length. Ultimately, you'll want to measure your GPU before you decide whether or not to buy additional storage trays. It's also really easy to install the GPU. First, what you're going to do is unscrew these 2 thumb screws here. Take that off, and then depending on your motherboard, most of them are going to be like this though. You'll undo the 2nd and 3rd thumb screws for the PCI slots. Take out the reusable PCI brackets here, insert your graphics card, and then rescrew everything back in. You can install CPU coolers up to 160 millimeters in height, just like the P360A. When determining which cooler you want, make sure you get the height measurement with fan before you click the Add to Cart button. I find it interesting the P400A is wider than the P360A, but still has the same CPU cooler height restrictions. I assume that they just put more of a gap of space in the back of the motherboard tray for routing cables. If you intend to get an AIO, be aware that you cannot mount one on the top of the case. More on that in a bit. Finally, you can install PSUs up to a length of 270 millimeters. As with the other 2 cases, you'll install the PSU by inserting it from the side and then screwing it into the back. There are some foam circles as well to keep things from rattling. With regards to fan support in the P400A, you can install up to 320 millimeter fans at the front or 2 140 millimeter fans at the front. On the top, you can also install 2 120 millimeter fans or 2 140 millimeter fans. And then finally at the back, you can see the pre-installed 120 millimeter fan. With regards to radiator support, you can install a 360 millimeter radiator here, or a 240 or 280 millimeter radiator, and at the back you can install one 120 millimeter radiator. Unfortunately, due to size constraints, you cannot mount a top radiator at all. There just isn't enough room for both it and fans. If you want to do a custom water loop in this case, you totally can. However, again, you will be restricted to only a front radiator or 120 at the back. So the radiator here can be up to 360 millimeters, and having that restriction, however, it looks like because there's a little bracket here that is removable and the hard drive cage is also removable, you can at least have a thicker rad. This will allow you to get better cooling for your components. Do be aware though that if you use a radiator at all, or even a standard like 27 millimeter thick radiator, or a thicker one to be able to dissipate more heat, then your GPU clearance will become an issue. Of course, it goes without saying that doing a custom loop here means you will not be using the hard drive cages. There just won't be room for it. So there's this little plate here that can come out, and it gives you a view of the hard drive cage. This is part of it, so you'll unscrew the whole hard drive cage, remove that. Probably at the bottom is where you'll want to mount a pump. I don't see really any place for a reservoir here. Maybe you could get creative and do a horizontal mounting here. But you know, this case can allow some custom water loop cooling, but it's gonna have a giant asterisk next to it. Finally, let's talk cable management. With the P400A, gone is the cable channel bar and back is the tried and true grommet system. You'll also find plenty of holes on the top and bottom of the case to snake front I/O and PSU cables through to your motherboard connectors. There are several cable tie-down points on the motherboard tray and 3 Velcro straps to keep your cables tidy. These are as strong as the Velcro tie-downs found on the P300A and P360A. I like the use of these straps as it will help you not have to rely on using too many single-use cable ties. The depth from the motherboard tray to the edge of the case is roughly 1 inch or 25 millimeters. This should be enough space to tuck away your cables. However, try to keep them as flat as possible so you don't bow out the back panel. Having a semi or fully modular power supply will also help keep cable clutter to a minimum. So as you can see here, it will be pretty easy to just behind, tuck away that cable. At the bottom of the case, you'll find 3 other holes for routing cables through. You should be able to fit the power supply cables through as well. However, you're gonna wanna pre-route your cables before you install the motherboard. There is just not enough room, at least because of all the fan connectors and other connectors here, to get this cable through this tiny hole. There is no hole further up front to be able to route that GPU cable right there. I kind of find this a bit of a misstep that was more or less rectified in the P300A and P360A, as the P360A definitely has a hole right here. For the I/O cables themselves, however, there's plenty of room because those are pretty small. As far as the cable grommets go, they're actually kind of narrow compared to ones I've seen before, but they'll do in a pinch. As you can see here with the ATX motherboard, it comes right to the edge of the 2 grommets that you get. If you're going to go with an ATX motherboard that extends out to, let's say, I don't know, probably here, these are going to get covered up. I think all in all, from a cable management perspective, there's definitely plenty of room, and I like that. Now that I've had a chance to look at the P300A, P360A, and P400A, which one would I recommend to you? Depending on the price at the time you're looking to buy and your budget, all 3 cases are pretty good. However, after having looked extensively at all of them, built fully in one and somewhat in the other 2, I give my recommendation to the P360A. It has more features than the P300A for not much more money, and it has nearly all the same features as the P400A, minus space for a 3rd fan at the front, or those extra hard drive cages you can purchase separately. However, you can purchase a 3rd 2.5-inch storage caddy for the P360A. The P360A can also fit more millimeters worth of radiators if you want to build a custom loop. If you intend to use an AIO, yes, a 360mm option might be preferable to a 240 or 280, especially if your CPU pumps out the heat. However, if your CPU doesn't have the thermal output of a Hephaestus's forge, then a smaller AIO will do you just fine. The P360A also has the added advantage of being able to mount the AIO at the top of the case. Finally, the P360A costs less and has a slightly smaller footprint than the P400A, while also having RGB. Whether you love or hate the pretty lights, the P360A has them, and for less than the non-RGB version of the P400A. The one place the P400A outshines its younger siblings is the overall amount of storage you can install. But because taking advantage of this extra capacity also results in you spending more money, it's not too much of an advantage really. If Phanteks included at least 2 of the 4 possible drive cages out of the box, then this would definitely be a win for the P400A. As these cases are basically 2 and 3 years old now, let's take a quick moment to talk about what Phanteks could do if they ever update these cases, as I definitely think they are worthy of a revision. First off, get rid of the P300A and put the P360A in its price category instead. The 2 cases are so close to each other feature and price-wise that the P300A is fairly redundant. Update the P400A to have a similar tempered glass mounting mechanism as the P360A, or give it a hinge mechanism you'll find in the P500 and 600 series of cases. Only offer a digital RGB version of the P400A, but at the non-digital case's price point. Add a 3rd 2.5-inch storage mounting point to the P400A revision like you'll find on the P360A, but include the sled. And also include at a minimum 1 of the extra drive cages. Lower the P400A's motherboard mounting position so it can accommodate top-mounted radiators plus fans, or increase the height of the case. Finally, the I/O for both updated cases should include a USB 3.2 Gen 1 or 2 Type-C port by default. As I previously stated, a Type-C port should not be a luxury feature in 2022. Wrapping things up, if you're a veteran PC builder or completely new to this wonderful experience, buying a PC case can be overwhelming because there are just so many options available to you. The best advice I can give you is this. Set an amount you are willing to spend on a case within a $10 price range of that amount, for example $70 to $80. Then look at all the cases within the range, Narrow your choices down to the cases that have the features you deem are an absolute must, and after that, look at both user and media reviews. Finally, make your choice and it will be in one that is informed. And that's all I have to say about that. I had a lot of fun looking at these three Phanteks Eclipse cases. The Phanteks P400A, while getting long in the tooth, is a good case, especially if you can find it on sale for the price I did. It offers good storage, comes with 2 fans, and is spacious enough to fit almost any component. What do you think of the P400A? Do you own one? Do you own one of the other 2 Eclipse cases I've gone over? Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hit that like button if you liked the video or at least found it helpful. Feel free to share any questions or comments you have down below. Show your support for the channel by clicking subscribe, and don't forget to click that notification icon so you don't miss out on any future content. And hey, while you're here, why don't you check out some of the other videos I've made. I'm Seth, and I'll see you next time in the middle of nowhere.